Call the meeting to order. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right. So I guess we're here to the opening thing that we want to talk about, which is what you left us off with. Well, you started off the last meeting with was a discussion on the expectations and goals of the project. And I guess, did you have a chance to, did you hear about that from the last meeting?
I did not.
Yeah, that's right. You weren't here, were you?
Yeah, I was not here last time.
And how about you? You remember that from the last meeting, right?
Me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Do you want to put out your expectations and goals, or do you guys want to start this off from your end first?
If you're ready, yeah, I'd just love to hear if anybody has any specific thoughts or comments. We want to get them down so as we go through the process, and particularly in the final report, make sure we provide a report that addresses everything you guys are wanting to see.
Okay. Would you like to start?
Yeah, so I guess that the expectations and the goal for the project is to do a full analysis to understand, what our outcome will look like for this particular project, starting with the survey that we went through the questions, going through design and execution, and potentially what that means to day two type of operations look like. So that's what I took away from the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
The big emphasis last week was on the survey for the folks that were not here.
Do you want to add anything, Mr. Cato, or you're good?
I'm good. Yeah.
As far as as far as the whole survey is concerned, I'm looking to gather as much information from the people of Dartmouth so that we can make the best decision for this project going forward. For me right now, that is the main goal. I know that there's a lot of other steps that are involved as we go on with this, but for me right now up front, it would be as much data as possible and looking for as much outreach as possible to get as much data as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
And I also understand that there was somebody met with you to take a look at the location. Did any perspectives change once they saw the vastness of our little town called Dartmouth?
No, not from my perspective. Peter was very generous and kind of drove me around for about an hour. I just happened to be in the area. It wasn't planned, but I was in Connecticut about a little over an hour away. So I asked Peter if I could drive over quickly and have him just show me around, and he did a great job. But it's pretty much what I've expected,
Okay.
And I think we've expected. We've worked. I know you're unique and a little more spread out than others, but we've certainly worked with some similar. So.
Okay.
So nothing that scared you?
Nope, nothing that scared me. Beautiful town, by the way. Loved everything about it. So.
Thank you. All right. So I guess the next thing would be a committee education session.
So Jeff Christensen, and I think I mentioned this before, what we like to do with committees is just take a little time at the beginning to kind of talk about topics and make sure the committee understands things that we're going to be getting into later. So for this one, I asked Jeff to just come up with a topic, but then I've got a list, which I did. I apologize. I sent out some information, but it was 15 minutes before this meeting, so I'm sure most of you haven't seen it. But there's a list in there, and what I'd like to do for the next meeting is have each committee member kind of review that list and maybe respond back with 2 or 3 or 4 of the list that they think I'd like to see that, or I'd like to learn more about that specifically. So with that, I'll go ahead and let Jeff go here. Jeff, I don't know how long you're planning, but I was thinking 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, that'll be good. And it doesn't have to be just a lecture. I'm just going to talk about some of the history, not all of the history. The history is very extensive. Interestingly, the history, at least as I understand it, actually did start in Massachusetts. Some people, Europeans are inclined to talk about the European angles, but we've got a lot of work in Massachusetts, and the history that I'm aware of really started at MIT. So I'm going to go into share mode here.
You're correct. It's MIT.
So I think that's relevant. And Leonard Kleinrock at MIT published the first paper on packet switching. So that wasn't really the internet per se, but something that became fundamental to making the internet possible. And then a colleague at MIT in 1962, Licklider, talked about the galactic network. So that really probably was the first, his vision of the galactic network, as I understand it, really became the seedbed for what eventually became the internet. And then in 65, Thomas Merrill and Lawrence Roberts, who I think both ended up at DARPA, went from academia to DARPA, connected a computer, presumably, I think it was probably MIT, but presumably MIT, to a computer referred to as Q32 in California. I think that was at UCLA, but I could be wrong about that. So that's kind of the early vision. And then all of this evolved into DARPA and ARPANET. So this is the history is so lengthy that I'm going to, for sure, I mean, this could be a 3-hour lecture. I'm going to leave out pieces that you're probably aware of, at least some of you. So it was with DARPA and ARPANET that this really started to get traction, and additional committees were formed, and they started to get international involvement. Standards bodies were built around it. They were publishing papers. At this point, Xerox came up with the first Ethernet protocol, and that hadn't been developed yet. So these early days, there was not Ethernet. There was this idea, I think in his paper, Kleinrock had successfully made the case that the most efficient way to move information or move data was through packet switching. But that didn't immediately grab hold. Other things were tried, and it was very much an academic process. And not very long, the federal government, through the National Science Foundation, also got involved. I mean, the government was involved with ARPANET, but NSF started to actively fund research around these ideas, and the Department of Energy was involved, in addition to the National Science Foundation. So this is kind of the seedbed, and I think it is interesting that it happened in Massachusetts. And there's an interesting history between Massachusetts and Silicon Valley, and there's been some interesting books about, it started in Boston, how did Silicon Valley get a foothold when clearly the genesis for not just the network, but a lot of the working computer and computerization as a whole happened at MIT and later Harvard and the greater Boston community. So anything any of you want to add that you are aware of, because the history is kind of local? At least to this early phase stuff.
No, just that the weather was better in Silicon Valley, so they all went up there.
One of the theories, and I've got the book that, I don't know if this theory is true or not, but one of the theories was that Boston was closer to Washington, D.C. And so the research that happened around Boston kind of moved around grant cycles. Silicon Valley was far enough away from Washington, D.C. that they created a seedbed for venture capital, and venture capital moved in time at a faster pace than the grant cycles of National Science Foundation and DOE and others. And that it was the speed of capital in time, not initially, but in time, as this really got a foothold. It was the speed of venture capital that gave Silicon Valley whatever advantages it got in the process. So that's one theory. I don't know if that's absolutely the case or the only way to read the history, but it's kind of an interesting take on it. So there's this comic strip in 1962, so around the same time, where the comic strip is talking about that the mail service will eventually only handle parcels, not data, and children may learn at home and only go to school for play. So, that's interesting post-COVID. I think I'm trying to remember, the Spillhouse guy, he was at the University of Minnesota, the Institute of Technology. So, in 1977, we got what they referred to as the packet radio van, which was part of DARPA, was part of the DARPA project. And it was, so the original internet did have this vision of not just communicating across wires, but also communicating wirelessly through satellite. And so they did refer to it as a network of networks. And so it was a way to inter-network across different media. So very early on, they were thinking about that a wireless network would be able to connect to a non-wireless, a wired network. And so this packet radio van became part of that there was this early idea of a network of networks. So you'd have wireless networks and wired networks, and the independence of the networks was an important part of it, and then creating protocols and standards around how do those networks talk to each other. So this is our really very simplified portrayal of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. 70s, the government invested heavily to create the infrastructure and the language, and it really is the 60s and 70s. That spending by the government happened throughout the 80s, and it was really in the 80s. In the 90s, it all came together, but in the 80s, it was research, conferences, papers, trying this, trying that. It was iteration in the way real research happens. Our portrayal in the 90s is a vast simplification, probably an oversimplification, but because none of us can see into the future, the government couldn't see what this was going to become, but through this iterative process, the government saw its role as a research role, not understanding that this would become, as critical, if not more critical than the interstate highway system. And, in a simplified way, just handed over the infrastructure and control of the infrastructure to a group of corporations. The guy who stood up the first ISP, we've got one history where he said, handing this off to these corporations was like handing off a national park to Kmart. Equivalent. I mean, he saw it at the time, and he was competing against their interests, and so directly affected by it. But essentially, the government created the research seedbed funding for all of this, and then a handful of corporations ended up controlling that infrastructure, and those are the big corporations that still have a lot of control today. So on the one hand, we have the telephone companies, on the other hand, we have the cable TV companies, but they control the massive backbones. The government also funded the intercontinental, so the the cables, the transcontinental cables that went across under the ocean. And then those got commercialized as well. So questions, comments on any of that?
Certainly very enlightening. I appreciate all the background on it. Certainly, I learned a few things today. So, no, thank you.
Yeah, let me tell you a couple more things. So there's I'm gonna skip. So we'll send you this deck so you can see it. 5 companies ended up consolidated what we're calling the pipes. You know, giving it to them is one thing. There was no oversight and there was no requirement. So they just let them take it and commercialize it. And there was no, and we're doing the same thing again now. There's, you know, with the BEAD money that's coming out, we're repeating this process, which means we're going to give away all of this money, this 42 billion for BEAD, plus another 20 billion in other forms. And the requirements, again, sort of the mindset is it will advance, it will connect more people and advance the greater good, but no strings attached in terms of pricing, or there's not a mechanism to sort of enforce the public good after it. And so, you know, our view is that we are ending up with an oligopoly, an infrastructure oligopoly. And I think the history of cable's probably a better view into the future than sort of the back and forth with AT&T, Ma Bell getting broken up and reconsolidated and then breaking up. This is a graphic on the evolution of cable. And again, we'll share this with you, but you can see that the capability. So if you go back to 1962, there's 800 different cable companies. So they were very regional. And in 1980, 16 cable subscribers. And then you move out to where we are, even in the early 2000s. You know, today we are consolidated primarily to 3. So from 1962, where there's 800, there's more than 3 today, but there's 3 that have most of it. There's another half dozen that have essentially some crumbs, but essentially Comcast, Charter, Spectrum, and Cox consolidated that industry. And we probably may have shared this with you before. You said this is going to play. It's not a complete picture, but it's a picture of what happened. And the reason it's relevant is we believe this will happen again with fiber. So there's literally thousands of ISPs, network operators in the country today. We believe that we've already started the consolidation, that what happened with cable going from 800 down to 3 is going to repeat itself, and it's going to play out over the next 10 years. And we think we're going to end up really with the same players. We're going to end up with, I think it's going to be AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, and then the 3 largest cable companies. We think they will do the consolidation, and we may have private equity money grow sort of a new player, not a new player today, somebody that's got some size today, but the private equity will help them become a consolidator. And so there may be a new name. T-Mobile's just in the last week or two. We've been hearing about this for 6 months, but just officially jumped into fiber in the last week or two, and we think they will end up being a consolidator. AT&T clearly is. AT&T's partnered with BlackRock, and if you know anything about BlackRock, you know that they get their fingers in every industry. They're involved in every industry. So the only exception, so this is just, AT&T's announcement in 2021, where we only heard about 5G prior to this time, that 5G was their strategy. They pivoted in March 2021 and said, no, fiber to the home is our strategy, and everything else is going to be come off of fiber to the home. And they've gone strongly towards that strategy since 2021. And they've partnered with BlackRock to do it. So the only exception, we believe, to this consolidation, and there may be some other cases, but we think the only exceptions will be municipal networks, and they won't get rolled up. They'll remain local players. And as you said in your, what matters to you, you want the data. So, you want to be able to make the right decision for Dartmouth, which is we 100% support. And we want to be able to say, this is what we think it will look like if industry, stop sharing. If private industry, you will get fiber. So whether the town of Dartmouth builds its own fiber network or something else, you will get fiber, and we think you'll get it in the next 5 years. The question will be, will it become part of a national consolidation and end up with one of those dominant industry giants, or will it be a local community network? We think that will be. And, our job is to help put the relevant data in front of you and not tell you this is the right choice, but to arm you with data and then let you work with select board, town leaders to decide what the right path is for Dartmouth. But, I think the history's interesting. It's really miraculous what's come together since, 50 years. And then obviously the speed of technology, we're going to see massive change over the coming 50 years. And these networks are going to be in the middle of all the change that happens. Fiber networks are not going to go away. But we're going to see all kinds of innovation across these networks, and they're going to be critical components of communities and states and cities and the country as a whole. So anyway, that's the very brief history, but important that it's got it start in Massachusetts, and we're glad to be working with the Massachusetts town here.
Well, we are revolutionaries at heart, so it makes sense it starts here.
Yeah, it's good.
Brad, if I could interrupt for a quick second, I realized as Jeff was speaking that I made a big mistake, and I left out a committee member from what the outlook and the expectations and goals for the project. So, Mr. Oliver, if you could please tell us what you expect for goals for this project.
Yeah, so certainly a good question. This is only my second meeting. I came in, I got appointed a little late. I don't know when the committee actually started.
Year and a half ago?
A year, I think.
Yeah, about a year ago.
About a year.
Yeah.
So this is only my
Over a
second.
year, maybe.
This is my only second meeting, but I'm trying to catch up. I've had a lot going on, but I think I'm looking forward to seeing exactly what can be brought to the table from Entry Point, and what we can do as a community to move forward with this. That's really all I have right now. I could go on. My background's technology, but yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Okay. I just wanted you to have your voice.
No, I certainly appreciate that, but I'm staying kind of quiet right now as I just absorb everything.
As he was talking, it hit me. I was like, oh my God, I forgot.
No worries.
Jeff, I understand exactly where you're coming from as far as, especially when you start throwing out names like BlackRock. And for me personally, I get what you're saying. I understand that. I think a lot of municipalities throughout the country are realizing that this is no longer something that we can just expect others to provide at a reasonable cost, and that local control of such an important utility for the future of a community is vitally important, especially for us here on the South Coast and what's going to be happening here in the next 10 years, as far as I can see. So, yeah, I get everything that you're saying. I understand what you were the point you were trying to make as how all of this started from federal funding and it was handed off, and they've managed to make, without sugarcoating it, boatloads of money. And now the second phase is coming with the fiber, and they're all pivoting now. And so
Yep.
I understand what you're saying. I get it completely. They see the dollar signs and they know where it's going. So for me, I want this more than anything than you could possibly imagine. So I look forward to the rest of this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next item is the reviewing the homepage, the statement, and community announcement for approval. Anybody else, before I change subjects, want to add anything?
Can I throw one more thing in there real quick?
Sure.
Let me share my screen and if I can get the right one shared here. So I sent this out to everyone. Can you see that now?
No.
No.
Seems like it's loaded. There it is.
There it is.
Might be kind of small, but so everybody has this, and kind of to your point and to Jeff's point. So our objective is to make sure we present what your options are and what's important to you and how all of this works. So here's a list of a lot of learning sessions. I'm not going to go through it now. I would just like, I'd like to give a little assignment to the committee of reviewing this, and each one of you, if you could individually maybe send back to either myself or Peter the 3 or 4 or 5 that you think you'd be most interested in hearing about. I'll just point out a couple of them. I know, like number 6 here, PON versus Ethernet. One of the things that you specifically asked for in the study is what are the differences there. So it's probably, I mean, we can present that, but it's probably good to have a session on something like that. Infrastructure, public versus private infrastructure, number 3. I'm not saying these are the ones we need to do, but we'd like to start each committee meeting with a little bit. And so I'd like to get your idea of which of these sound interesting. Grant opportunities, infrastructure, BEAD, ARPA, number 10 is another important one. You know, if the town does decide to do something on their own, you know, it's not cheap regardless. And so I think, you know, I would assume the reason you're doing this study in the first place is that there are gaps within the town. And our belief is that regardless of how much money the government spends and dishes out to private sector entities, their number one goal is never going to be to make sure that every premise within your town has affordable, high-speed access to broadband. And so as you're looking at this, I would just suggest go through it and just if send back some feedback to us, and then we'll just, as we go through each week, we'll hopefully spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or just kind of covering the topics that you guys are interested in. So
I had the opportunity to look at the email, and just from my experience, I think one and I just say this so that you can look at the list and see if you agree or if there are others. Topics 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, and 11 are probably most viable. The others, I'm a little biased, and Chris will be biased because we're technologists, so we know how, you know, the difference between Ethernet and PON systems. So if there are different technology questions that you have, certainly go with those. But I think that 1 through 4, 10, and 11 are going to be needed at a minimum.
great. Appreciate that feedback, Sarah. Thank you. All right, let me stop this. And now are we okay to move on to the review of the homepage, statement and community announcement? I'll be honest with you on that. So we had, let me kind of premise all of the next areas here. We had a great meeting last week. Peter, myself, Eric, and Magnolia I believe she's the new town communications coordinator. She went through the frequently asked questions. She went through the survey, and then she took on the project of writing the draft of the homepage statement and the community announcement. I just got that this morning and was in meetings all day, so I have not even reviewed it myself, but I just forwarded it to everyone. So that is in your materials. Let me pull it up here real quick. But I think rather than taking the full time of the committee at this point, we've got a little time on the survey and the website. I believe, Peter, we've talked about a town meeting, a select board meeting at the end of this month or the 1st of December, and basically to get their approval to release this. Is that correct still?
It's not their approval, it's just to announce it at their meeting. Like, we don't need their approval, I don't think.
Okay, so I guess that being the case, I don't know why this isn't pulling up here. My goal would be that we review these quickly today. Everybody provides feedback over the next week or so, and then hopefully in the next committee meeting, one of the things we can do is finalize. So finalize the website, make sure everybody's comfortable with what it's going to look like, finalize the frequently asked questions, and finalize the survey questions. Does that sound reasonable to everyone?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know why this is not. There we go. There we go. Finally pulled up. So this one document has two things. It has Dartmouth. It has basically, this is a press release. And the main point of the press release is to announce the survey. As I said, I haven't gone through this yet. I would like to add a little bit, announce the website and the survey. And it appears that it focuses more on the survey. But read through that and make any comments back. And then the mission statement is basically what we will put on the homepage of the website, which Eric's going to show you where we are with that right after this. And again, Magnolia drafted that. She's already highlighted the one area, which I think had a good point. Town-owned broadband would have increased speed and capacity. And she said why. We probably should explain, not just say that, but explain why would it or potentially have increased speed and capacity. So we will I'll review them and make some comments, but please, I'd love for the committee to make whatever comments they can. And I'd like to get this out by the end of next week so that there's more time to review it and we're ready in the next committee meeting to finalize. So. Any questions on that?
Just for me, one comment. Just earlier today, I had a chance to talk to Magnolia, and she said she was forwarding that information, so I'm glad she got that over to you. I think her comment was just, for us in this room who might have a little more knowledge about fiber optics and what's broadband and what does that actually mean, it's just the more information we could put in the announcements or simplify the terminology for people. I think that was her biggest takeaway, is her going into it kind of blind as to the goal of this study and this initiative. She just says, hey, kind of simplify for the people just so that some of the lingo I think was lost on her. And, that's, saying a lot for someone who's around it and has met on it. So that's.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And actually one of the things we're going to show you, she suggested some definitions of terms and things like that. So I think as a part of both the announcement and on the website and on the survey, we're going to have a link, and we've created the outline of it already. We'll show it to you, and I forwarded that to you. But kind of a terms that talks about what any of the terms we may use in the process, as well as what the different speeds mean and what the different types of access. We've had people say, "Well, what does wireless mean?" Some people won't even know whether they have wireless or hardwired lines. So we're working on that. And Eric, why don't you pull up the website, and then after we're done talking about that and the survey, we will, I'll pull up those questions and just show you. Eric, do you want to, you're on mute. I don't know if you.
We don't use Zoom. So every single time it went away and I did not know how to unmute. All right.
So Kevin, I believe, who is not here tonight, but provided these pictures.
Yep.
So feel free to comment. We just kind of put some different pictures from Dartmouth on here. Comment on those pictures. And then Eric, just kind of walk through this. We did it a little last time, but just kind of walk through.
Yeah. Yeah. So things that we've added since the last time we showed you. I don't know if we had the survey link yet, but the survey is linked. This is where it will be at the top. And then as well, we have 4 pictures up here that Kevin sent. And as well, I could get a link that goes to this before it's even published, just so it's private viewing. If everyone wanted to take a look at it and thought that was useful, we could send that out as well.
Yeah, I think that would be useful.
Okay, perfect. We can do that. So we have the 4 pictures up here. You can take a better look at when you see the link. And I still don't have the messaging. This is an old message, so I don't have new messaging, but this will be the area that goes in once it's finalized for the website.
Yeah, what we'll do there is we will review what Magnolia came up, make our recommended changes, and then we'll put it in there as a placeholder, but then obviously wait for everyone else's comments and thoughts.
Yes. And as well, we've updated all the social media. So we have town website, Magnolia sent us LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And so all of those have been updated. And then as well, the only other picture that we have on the website is the FAQ. I don't know if you want to go through FAQs right now. But
yeah, let's
as well. We have.
Yeah, let's talk for just a second about the FAQs. Magnolia made that same comment as she went through the FAQs that we had talked about. Basically, she said, "I don't know a lot of these terms. I don't understand a lot of it. So simplify it." So we made the changes here that we had talked about with the committee last week. So you have, or 2 weeks ago. You have the new, I mean, it's on this website, but you actually have just, I believe, a Word document that shows those FAQs. I'm just pulling up right now the notes from the last one so I can talk through specifically what we did. Hold on just 1 second. So on the FAQs, I believe there was really only one major change. Well, 2 actually. Eric, go down that a little more. We added a question kind of per Peter. This is optional still. Where's the question on? There's a lot. So there are a lot. I know there was one community close to you that recently did a vote. And if you decide to do some type of municipal broadband, it's also obviously going to ruffle some feathers of some current incumbents. Anything you do does not prevent them from offering services, but obviously they'll look at it as competition. So we added a question here. I've heard there have been problems across the country with community-owned broadband networks. How will the broadband committee address these concerns? So read through that answer and see if that makes sense, if you agree with it. But we added that question. And then what was the other question that we made a change on? Oh, then we made some adjustments on the timeline for the completion of the study. And what will the final report to the town look like? Magnolia again said, well, could we be a little more specific on that? And as well as if the town chooses to move forward, what's the timeline there? So we just added a statement. If they choose to move forward with a community fiber network, we would anticipate it would take 2 to 4 years to build a network such as that. So she said, I would want to know, when am I going to have access to it? So again, look at that. If you have any comments, questions, send that back, and we'll just make changes as we get feedback. I think Peter's mentioned before, we can receive direct emails individually from committee members here. So if you want to just respond individually to us and say, here's my thoughts or comments, that's great. If not, you can route those through Peter, but we'll consolidate all of those and hopefully put together a final. I'm hoping by the end of next week, so that everybody has time to review it. And at the final committee meeting, we can just say, yes, that looks good. as soon as we run this by the select board, we'll release this. Eric, do you want to go now directly from there to the survey questions?
The only thing I saw in there with the fact, just to make sure that you've got that accurate, is you had that AT&T and Verizon were now embarking on fiber. They've been fiber to the premise. They've been on that journey for at least 10 years. You just want to make sure that you're accurate on that. They're not.
Okay,
here.
I think, okay, I will make that note right here. Yeah, they've been doing it. This question may just not have been revised for several years.
It's okay.
We would do a link on our page. Okay.
I should have asked, any other questions on the FAQs without having a lot of time to review them yet?
This is Mike, MIS Director for the town. Can you make this available like now? So I know we have the emailed materials, but we'd like to see it like on the website with these materials. That way we can do screenshots of this and say, okay, let's take this word out, this sentence out, move this here. You know what I mean? So we're not doing double duty. So yeah, we see the materials that you sent us in like a PDF or Word documents, and then we're seeing it here, and we might want to make tweaks here once it gets to this point on the website.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So if you could
And-
provide this now as like a working behind the scenes website to the committee members, and we can work off of this with the material that we're getting.
Yeah, we can send the link
what I mean?
so you can see it just like if it were a posted
We just keep
website.
that
It
to
won't
ourselves.
actually be posted.
Don't provide that
get
to,
that.
or you can even, if you wanted to lock it down, you could provide a password that we can get in and, gain access to content,
It's just a separate link. It won't have a password, so you'll access it just like a normal website.
Okay,
But you won't be able to edit it.
got it.
Will be the only thing that there isn't. I'm not able to give permission to like edit these, but I liked your idea of screenshotting and saying whatever you might want to add to it and maybe an email.
Okay.
Is there any issue?
And Eric,
And this is not going to be like is this gonna be the main broadband site, or is it gonna be a subset of what's on the town's page?
The town's page will have a link to this, but then they're also gonna, at the last meeting, the committee voted to have its own URL.
Okay.
That'll go directly to this page. So basically, they'll be able to talk to,
Okay.
get linked from one another.
All right.
But, and then part of the money that we're paying Entry Point includes this for a year. And then after that, we can decide as a community, as a group, if we just want to take all this information into our current website.
Okay.
But the committee thought that going forward right now, having, where they're gonna be updating a lot of this information, like as far as the survey and everything else, that it'd be great just to have them have it on their site, host it, and then move it over, transition over
Okay.
Is
after
there,
the year.
is there any issue with us doing screenshots and comments through email? Like, can we?
No, you're not,
reply to
you're just
all,
not
or-
supposed to talk to the whole committee. So like if you do a screenshot and send it to just directly to Brad, that's probably the best way to do it.
Okay.
As you have comments, send it directly to Brad and Eric, and then this way they can make the changes. It's just that you're not supposed to deliberate as a committee.
Don't
by
reply all.
email. Right.
to everyone.
Right.
So that's it. So, if you have a comment, great, just send it along to them. And same thing with Chris or Aaron or whoever has comments.
so Eric, so we can get that to them by tomorrow, correct?
We can do it by the end of the meeting today if you'd like.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
so we'll get access, so we'll send that out in an email to the committee so that they can access this and just make comments directly off of it. We will be editing it as you're accessing it, so like I say, there will be some changes, and then, yes, if you send us questions or comments, we can put those in, but we'll also track specifically what we changed. Because if one person sends a comment and says, I want this changed, and someone else sends a comment that says they want it differently, we want to make sure everybody's aware. So we'll say, these are the changes that have been made based on the comments. So we'll make sure we communicate that to the committee. My next question, Eric, is is the survey already linked, or you said it's created there, but is this linked to the draft of the survey we have?
It is. Yeah, it just updates when I change it. Yep.
Okay, so when you provide access to this website, they'll also have access to the survey.
Yes.
Okay, great. Because that's, the one, when I send the email, the survey in particular, in the format that I've sent it, it's obviously doesn't, because there are certain questions that, various questions, so being able to access it on there will probably be better. So, Eric, so you've got the survey, and as you look at that, so we made the title the Dartmouth Broadband Internet Access Survey, as we talked about. We added, we had entertainment, we had work, school, and entertainment. We changed that to streaming TV/video. I guess the question I would have is, do we want to have, I mean, is that what everybody would consider entertainment? Should there be entertainment and a separate one that is streaming TV video, or should we leave the word entertainment and streaming TV video? Any thoughts on that initially?
You have gaming, I think that would be the other
Yeah.
entertainment vehicle, other than the streaming. Can't think of anything else.
No.
Yeah, okay. I think streaming would cover Netflix as well as over-the-top TV, YouTube, all of that. So I like that better than entertainment. I think that's more clear. Let's see. We had here on the wireless internet, wired internet connection, and the cell phone. We kind of listed. Are there any other providers? I mean, we listed what we thought would be the main ones: Xfinity, Comcast, Verizon, DSL, and satellite, et cetera. But is there anything? Are you okay with us listing those, as we understand those are the main providers there, or does that sound fair?
Did you put, we also talked about 5G, 4 and 5G home internet.
That's
Okay,
a
so what-
question, yeah, that we have below. Is that something that you want to have added here as well?
Is it below? I'm kind of looking at
It
it.
says I only have
Well-
cellular.
I just have to move to it.
Yeah, I only have cellular internet, which 5G falls into that category. Is that what you're
Yeah,
thinking?
5G LTE, okay, it's lower, it's later in.
So yeah, so if you answered, I have cellular connection, then it's gonna move you down to this
Okay.
question, right? And then,
Yeah, yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so we added that in the, as you said, so if they go to the I have wired connection, it takes them to a certain place. They say only have internet through cell phone. So on the wired here, it takes them down which one, DSL, cable, satellite, other, or I don't know. If they say, that's why I say this doesn't go in the order on this survey. This is the order we created it, but when you actually go to the website and link, it will take you. So if you say, I don't have internet service, it will ask you why. Either I don't have options available to me, or the options available are not affordable, or other. And we added the please specify there. I think that wasn't on there last time. So if they have other, there may be another reason that they don't have it. I don't need it. I don't want it, whatever. So that was a change we made. This is where the cell question, it'll go 5G, LTE, other again, or I don't know.
Are there any options that we're missing on any of these that anyone sees between the cellular to the wired?
Yeah, so for the cellular internet, I think just for clarity for people, a lot of people may not know LTE, so maybe you could do LTE/4G.
Yep, good call.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we want to keep this as simple as possible. I mean, us in this room know what it is, but to Chris's point, you know, you got to consider your audience right down to like Magnolia.
Right.
You know, so they completely understand what we're trying to do here.
Yes.
Like when I talk to the selectmen, if I go to the selectmen for something, I explain it to them, what the end state of this, everything I want to get to, here's my end state. And this is what I need to get there. And this is what it's going to cost me, you know, without getting into the weeds, because I will lose them. I'll see them start going with the iPad and you know what I mean? So I want to keep their attention while I'm trying to explain what I'm trying to do. You just got to keep your audience in mind, and it's not all techies like us.
No, I have concerns about the confusion between what mobile broadband is versus
Yeah,
Wi-Fi.
I'm looking
'cause
at
there's
that, and,
tons of people that
yes.
don't know the difference between mobile broadband and Wi-Fi, and
Right.
you know,
We know it.
yeah,
We know it.
exactly.
You know what I mean?
well, that's why I think when you have internet connections, it does say wired, is it
Yeah.
Comcast, is it is it Verizon, is it, so this way it kind of leads you towards that?
Yeah.
Because, like, plenty of people are gonna go home and like, oh no, I have wireless internet, cause I have Wi-Fi in my house, like I connect all my, but they don't have wireless, they have wired, like, they have Xfinity or something, so I think that's why it's nice that those are in there. And hopefully people answered, I have a wired internet connection with Xfinity and.
Is there a scenario where someone's gonna try and select both options?
You can't.
Okay.
Yeah, what we're looking for, if they have wired, we want them to collect wired, where almost everybody is also going to have a cell phone and be able to access it through their cell phone. So that's why it says I have wired, and then it says I only have internet through my cell phone.
So should the,
Cell phone hotspot?
should it, your current internet connection at home
What are you trying to do?
for your house or for your residence, or instead of,
Yeah,
That's what-
now that you just brought that up, I'm wondering if like, cause somebody answering that might be like, yeah, well, I have it on my cell phone, I have it at home,
Yeah, you have high-speed internet to your house, but then once you get to the wireless router, now you've got wireless in your house. Well, do I have wireless or wired? Well, you kind of have both.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why we took off the wireless. There's no mention of wireless. It's just I have a wired connection. And again, we're never going to be able to get everybody to understand every question.
I got
but
it, I got it.
That's kind of what we're trying.
it might be at your home and or business, because we're asking also
Yeah.
businesses to answer this, so.
Okay, I like
I
that.
like that option.
All right, let's keep moving through this.
How
We're
about
still.
I'm sorry, this is Chris here. How about through a cellular carrier? I only have internet through my cellular carrier, and then I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
I agree with that.
Like that more?
You'll want to put AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and Xfinity, because they're
Oh, right.
third-party reselling. They don't own the network, but they resell it.
Yes, that's who my cell phones are through currently. I think, don't they use the Verizon network, but somehow they sell it cheaper.
I can't confirm or deny.
They're using the Ryan Reynolds cricket.
Yeah, I'm just gonna throw this out, if we put Xfinity there, is that gonna?
You have
Yeah, I
to,
don't know.
because there are people who have Xfinity as cell phone.
There's a lot
Because
of
there's a lot of people on Dartmouth helping Dartmouth that go, oh, what are the different options for carriers? And somebody will be like, who owns networks? And they'll put Xfinity, and I'm like,
Maybe Xfinity Mobile. Oh, mobile. Let me a Coke. Mobile, Xfinity Mobile, you gotta put there, because
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
really.
I just don't want them to make people think like, oh, well, I have Xfinity, and then.
Yeah.
and,
yeah, but
oh, well, I'm connected
Xfinity
with-
Mobile
Yeah.
will identify it, but you've got to put it because people are
That's
on
fine.
it.
And they're not going to know
I
who
have
the
a
carrier
question.
is.
I have okay, so consider me the layman in the room. Why do we need to gather this information as far as?
Because, so, Saul,
Go ahead,
that
give
really
it to me.
good question. This is gonna take 2 to 4 years to build if we go forward with it,
Eh?
all right? These mobile carriers are well underway for 5G networks covering the entire
Yes,
town.
agreed.
5G is comparable to fiber.
Agreed.
And so you need to know, because not everybody's, if it's gonna be really expensive to build this network.
Yep.
And if they lock up, because Xfinity or whomever is going to go out to each of the constituents and lock them up in a sweetheart deal. They did it to us in Boston for FiOS, when we built FiOS. That's why. You need to know, like, are you gonna have owner's economics to be able
Well,
to move forward?
I'm not asking about all the questions in the
Yeah,
survey. I'm
no,
just
but
saying,
that's-
just this,
that's
why do we have to be specific as to how they're getting their internet?
Because if they're going with a mobile provider and and this area is going to be densified with mobile, you're gonna have to question whether or not you're gonna have owner's economics to be able to move forward with the
Got
project.
it. Okay. That's why I'm asking the
No,
question, because
totally.
it's
It's a great
because that's like a
question.
really like fine question, and I'm trying to understand how it works. But now that you've put it that way, I'm seeing what you're saying, because like you said, you got 4 years, or 5 years till it's done, and technology is moving much faster than we are.
Right.
Okay, I understand. Sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to understand.
Yeah, and just
Go
to, we're not asking them in the next question, which one of these providers. So we're not trying to, find out specifically, is it AT&T
Yep, I
or
get it.
Verizon? We're just trying to find out that, and then are they using 5G, LTE, et cetera? So,
Yeah, we do put the name of the companies here, but that's just an easier way for people to know if they have cable.
Right.
Got it.
Because otherwise, a lot of people don't know that they have cable internet. It's just another hard question. People don't know these answers. And the name is the easiest way to understand if you have it or not.
let's see. I know on one question, okay, here, if you go down there, we added on the ranking system, we added one on the customer service. So on a scale of 1 to 4, how would you rate your current internet service provider based on their customer service? That was requested last time. Question number 8, Eric, where's number 8 on there? Are these numbered even?
We changed them around a lot. No.
Okay, I wrote down question number 8, but on one of them, I think we added faster on
Where was it? Well, we added faster way below. It's this.
okay.
So we added faster on.
We added faster speeds. You added this ranking ability to move those up and down, correct?
Yep. You wanted to have a ranking to see what's most important to people between these 5 categories is what we have. Are there any other categories that you know besides the speed, reliability, customer service, price, and unlimited data?
No, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And on the actual survey, it's a little easier. Once you move it, it will say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you actually have the numbers, but right here, it's not showing us that.
Yeah, so they'll just move those up and down to where they feel appropriate. I think the last thing on this was just the comments, optional, leave comments. We put optional to make sure everybody understands none of this is required. Leave comments for the committee, enter your email address and your street address. But as I said, we wanted to make sure those were purely optional.
Saul, one other thing that I just thought of, the reason why we want to put those company names, and this sounds funny, but for our older generation, if you ask them who their internet provider is, they might say AOL.
Oh, absolutely.
Or Gmail.
That's where my mind is at. When we're discussing all of this stuff, and everybody in here is very on point with a lot of the different things, but I'm thinking of my parents.
Right, that, and
them trying to take this survey. As a matter of fact, here's what I'm gonna do is I'm going to my parents' house tomorrow, and I'm gonna have my parents take this survey. And I'm gonna see, I know how my father's gonna
idea.
answer. Everything's too expensive, you know what I mean? And that's his answer for everything. But I'm sitting here the whole time, and all I'm thinking about is a lot of the people in the community who aren't as tech savvy
Right. Well, and
who just want a good, reliable, I don't want to use cheaper, but more cost-effective alternative versus what we currently have right now. And I mean, so that's why I'm asking the question, because I really want. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. Fairhaven, how many people responded to the survey?
Do you have that information, Eric? I don't have that off the top of my head.
I don't think
Even
the
if it's a
number was very
ballpark.
high.
Sorry, what town?
Fairhaven. I remember when I looked at their survey, the total number of respondents was not a very high number.
I can try and find that. Give me one moment.
You know what you could do if it fits within the timeline is when we nail down the survey questions and how we want it to present, call in a couple of people and not tech savvy to take the survey.
Here, I'm gonna stop sharing
Let
for a
us give
second.
them,
Agreed.
give them,
But-
have them give us feedback on, did you understand what you were being asked
Exactly.
in the survey?
I-
How can we tweak this sentence so you
I like that
understand it
idea.
better?
Honestly, I like that
If
idea.
it fits within the timeline.
Okay, so did you find the number? It was not a very big number. When I studied Fairhaven's information, that was one of the things I came away with, was that there was the respondents. I mean, how many people live in the town of Fairhaven? It's got to be
16,000.
15,000. I think they had
It's 509.
how many?
509 responses.
Okay. I don't know about you guys, but that sounds like a small number to me out of 15,000 people. So,
Not for a survey,
no, really? Okay,
Yeah.
because what I'm,
unfortunately.
here's what I'm thinking, and I'm going ahead only because I've walked these shoes before, so we have a responsibility to educate. And how we educate is through communication with these people that are gonna be taking the survey. If we can get out in front of the new technology that's coming, how we do that is by interacting with people and having them ask questions. Because then what happens from there is that germinates out. And that's why I'm looking with this survey to not only use it to collect data, but also to begin the communication. So that way, when the time comes for town meeting, it's germinated, it's taken off. And that's why a small number like 500 feels small to me in a community this big.
So actually, that's a good point. So up on the screen, he has a sample size calculator. So kind of their methodology for, I guess, the accuracy of the survey. So
Right.
I haven't seen that, so I'm just curious what it would be for Dartmouth, because that one is
I
showing.
think they were trying to say that originally they were looking for about 10%.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
they were looking
What's
for
the
about 1,000.
population size?
33.
Dartmouth?
33,000.
Yeah, so one of the questions that I always have in my mind here, so we have a population of 33,000, but we're not going to expect multiple people from one household to respond.
Agreed. Agreed.
And and that's, I mean, this just kind of gives it, so if we do consider it the full 33,000, Eric's pulled it up here, 95% confidence with a margin of error of 3%, we would expect 1,034. I mentioned the number in the first meeting that 1,000, I think 1,000 would be a good goal. That's asking a lot.
Yeah,
But one of the things, I believe the Fairhaven survey was done quite a while ago.
it was 2021.
Yeah, so it was done 2 years ago, and I'm not sure at the time, I was not involved in that study, but recently we have really asked the committee, so at each committee meeting, once we start this, we will present the numbers and we'll let you know, okay, we need more communication. Hopefully if we have access to Magnolia, we'll go to Magnolia and say, what can we do on your Facebook or your Instagram or any of these other sites to encourage more participation, as well as just talk to committee members and say, please reach out to whoever you want. So, I mean, I think to one of the points at the very beginning of the study, the more information we get, the better. And we're going to do everything we can to maximize the participation.
Okay.
Something to consider. Back in 2011, I taught at UMass doing an ICT class, Information Communication Technology, and one of the things that we did was a digital readiness project. Basically it's part of their MBA program. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to reach out to UMass Dartmouth, see if there might be graduate or undergraduate students that might be interested in working on the, kind of as an intern, and they might be able to help with gathering some of that data.
Yeah, I like that idea. I know there's been talk of, do we want to do a paper survey as well? We've mentioned it. I mean, that's not a part of our fee that we propose for us to gather data and input that, all of it, from 200 paper surveys, but that's another use potentially for an intern, because if we can send them a spreadsheet and they can actually go to the senior centers or whatever, for example, and say, would you like to take this survey? And then someone can input that data, then we can include it in the survey. So there's some ways. And as we move, once we release the survey, for sure, we will start talking about how do we increase the participation. That's one of our main goals.
Peter, I saw that you took notes. It was with the Charlton School.
One of my other questions is, has anyone in town reached out to SERPED, the Southeastern Regional Planning Authority?
That's funny, because Chris and I have a meeting with them on Thursday.
Because I know they certainly do this type of, some of this community outreach.
So they have a fill right now, and they're doing their own regional study on it that they receive funding for. So we'll definitely see areas where we can partner and if there is any overlap, and maybe how we can use that data as part of our local efforts here.
Sure.
The one thing I will say about the internship is just based on this timeline, it might be a little bit difficult to have an intern per se, but if there is a class, that, we could connect with maybe the professor of, and maybe if they want to take this on as a class, project or assignment, maybe that would fit with our timeline here. And I just know when it comes to internships, for it to be official, there's a lot of hoops that we would have to jump through, and maybe just because of this quick turnaround, it just might not fit with this phase of the project. But definitely, if we can reach out to them and they can help us when that survey does go out, that might be a really good resource.
My other question would be, how are we targeting commercial, industrial in Dartmouth as well with the survey? If it's going to be available to not just residents, but also businesses, correct?
Right, and that's what I brought up at our last department head meeting on Monday, to ask department heads to give me to start thinking of a list of some of these businesses that we should be contacting. Because when the survey launches, part of the agreement is that they're gonna, Entry Point's gonna come down and do like an in-person, kind of launch to the survey.
Okay.
And so during that day, our thought was we could bring in some of the businesses that we know are heavy internet users, have them meet with them directly, and almost have like a round table with just those businesses, like couple key groups, so we might have like 2 or 3 meetings that day.
Right.
And ending with like a public meeting at night, so anyone from the general public can come in and hear, and that would be like the official big kickoff.
Yeah, you got Fons Connor Road.
And so that's my thought, is we
Building
would,
supply.
my first thing would be,
Building supply.
yeah.
Right,
The
exactly.
medical places
Yeah,
up there,
medical,
and then also
Hawthorne,
even, then you got the,
South Coast.
industrial park, New Bedford, Dartmouth
Yeah.
Industrial Park up there, so I'm sure, we can get a list of who's in there. And we
Maybe
can
some
pick
good
up.
old fashioned salesman's calls, which
Right.
I'll take a day off of work and go knock on some doors. Absolutely, I'm,
Do we have access, or can we use any of the information, like when folks sign up for digital billing and, they're providing their emails that way, can we send out? Or is it only an opt-in?
I was thinking that, like the invoice cloud, the town's real estate, and how they collect taxes and billing, and I was thinking the school too.
Yeah, the school could
the
certainly
school
put
system
out
where
a-
they send out. I was thinking all those types of systems that we have.
Well, and maybe we could take advantage of the built-in on the Civic Plus site in terms of the mailer. The school mailer is an
Yeah.
option. When it comes to the tax bills, just because they print those ahead of time and because they're on a schedule, I don't think we'd be able to, just based on when those would have gone
Yeah,
out.
I don't think it has to be on the bill, just the,
No,
you
who
know, like,
has signed up to the
yeah,
system
whatever-
to pay bills? You have to actually create an account to actually pay your bill online.
Yeah.
So though that information exists.
It might be tricky just based on what they signed up to receive. So that, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe just look at kind of the terms of that.
I can ask the finance director on
Yeah.
that. What exactly is entailed in that?
The town has several electronic billboards as well, electronic signs.
Yes. Yes.
Another thing, what about 30-second informational video that could put on social media, Facebook,
Yeah, that's
as a
already-
Facebook video, not a link to go to
Right.
YouTube,
Yeah.
plays right in front of somebody's face,
Yep.
gets on Dartmouth, helping Dartmouth, says, Dartmouth's exploring the possibility of
Yeah,
municipal
that's
broadband.
So we just,
To take the survey, follow this link, or scan this QR
Right.
code with your phone.
Yeah.
we just did that same exact thing, because the town's right now doing a communication survey, and so we did that same exact
Yeah.
video. So my plan was to do the same thing when we figure this out, with a QR code right on the screen where you can, we'll play it, we got concerts coming up, so we'll play it while people are watching
Yeah.
those. We'll play it as sporting events, like our football game this past week had over 1,000 views by the end of the weekend. So that's, that helps. And live, there was over 300
yeah,
people watching. So
I'm actually thinking of good old fashioned standing out in front of Stop and Shop, a Home Depot, Lowe's on a Saturday, and a piece of paper with Dartmouth letterhead with a QR code. Hey, you a Dartmouth resident? Yeah. This is the broadband survey. Give this a quick scan. It'll take you about 30 seconds. The time it takes you to walk to the aisle, what you're looking for, you'll be able to fill it out. That increases our data intake. That to me is very important. That's what I'm That's what I want. I want as much data as possible, because the more respondents we have, the better it looks. And that's why I'm really keyed up on this survey and how intimidating it might get for some people. And so, but that's,
Just one thing, I know this is going back just on the survey questions. I know at the very bottom of the survey, you had the option for people to put in the email whether or not it was their home address or their business address. Is there actually a question asking whether or not they're filling out the survey as a home or business, like a
First one.
the first question? Oh, I missed it. All right, in that case, yeah, you're good.
You filling this
That's
out?
my thing. Yeah.
Is it
I'm good.
resident or business?
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yep.
Take that back. Perfect.
all right, anything else?
The only other question I had is on the, where you asked for the amount, and again, this is because I know everyone's cheap and everyone will, I'm not sure if you've seen like a lot of people actually answer that honestly, or is everyone gonna just pick $0 to $20?
I
Because
think-
that kind of,
I think last meeting, they mentioned that you do your own individual research as well and compare the data. Did I recall that correctly?
We do that as well, but also it's surprising. The number one answer for that question on all the surveys I've done, at least, has been $41 to $60.
Okay.
People generally know it's not going to cost $0.
yeah, this is asking people in the survey what they
Yeah.
would want to pay.
Oh.
And I
Yeah.
could just picture everyone saying, I want to pay $0 to $20. Like, that's what everyone wants to pay. No one wants to pay that much. Like, so that kind of concerns me about that 0 to 20. Like, I would have said, I would take that away, because we all know that that's not feasible. Like, you're never going to get something 0 to 20. So
You do get a few, but it's actually a low number.
Yeah.
It's the 41 to 60, and then people go 61 to 80, and then you see a few 21 to 40s. Those are the general area that they sit
Okay.
in.
So people are filling it out properly.
Yeah.
Just
Couple quick comments before we close that out. Number one, you commented about the meetings that we're going to do there. That's actually why I was in Connecticut, and they did exactly what Peter said. They're a little further along in the process, so it wasn't related to the survey, but they did a seniors only meeting in the morning. They did a business meeting in the afternoon, and then they did a full anybody that wants to come in the evening. Interestingly, the seniors meeting had more than double what either of the other two meetings had. So kind of surprising, but there was definitely a lot of interest there. And then Devin, who joined the call, just pointed out a couple things. And we have materials to support you, but we have had flyers that students have been handed out at school to take home to their parents saying, fill out this survey, please. And we certainly have flyer information type things that could be stuffed in utility bills, anything, if you have options that are available, we can certainly support and provide
that is
flyers or
definitely
whatever we want to include with that.
An insert in the billing is an absolute option.
Yeah, I thought
I'm sure the finance director would have no issues with that.
that would be nice.
In the senior center, I'm sure we can work with them.
And the
They would-
library, the libraries too.
Yep.
Yep, absolutely.
So the last thing I wanted to discuss, so I think on the agenda, it's discuss field level design, FLD. So once we start getting to modeling some of the various things, one of the important things for us to know is where the fiber would be run, placement of various things, what everything looks like. So one thing we're going to request, and if it's okay, I'll coordinate with Peter, but we'd like to schedule a call with the Public Works Department. And I won't go through it, but one of the documents I sent out to you was, one of the documents I sent was kind of the questions that we'd be asking them, just to help us get some feedback on, the layout of the town. I mean, I looked at it, but I'm not the engineers. So our team of experts will look at that and want to talk to the Public Works Department. So I'll work with Peter on scheduling that. I know you can't all attend that, or else it has to be a board meeting or a committee meeting and announced. But I would guess if maybe one or two of you wanted to, Peter could coordinate with that. But I've asked Devin just to show you. So we put as an option in our response to do a feasibility level design through a partner company. It's not us, but it's an engineering company. It actually gives us very good detail and it's within plus or minus 10% in terms of length, the actual length and the actual locations of fiber. The main difference between that and a full design is that we don't actually have somebody go out and do a visual inspection. And number one, and number two, they run the fiber up the middle of the streets, if you would, as opposed to actually going out and saying, okay, in this area, it's got to be on the east side. In this area, it's got to be on the west side. But I wanted Devin to show you real quickly what the output of that looks like so you can get an idea of the detail. Again, that was optional. I think there may be a little bit of money in there in Dartmouth to fund part of that. We don't have to do the entire, I believe it's $1.10 per premise. We don't have to do every premise. We can take a subset and say, this is an area that we feel would be representative of the town, but that information will inform us much better when we start talking about the cost to do various networks. So with that, I'll let Devin quickly share his screen and show you, and then we can talk after.
All right, hello everybody. Can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
So what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you Westport's design. Okay, I thought that was probably the most appropriate given their neighbors of yours. And what Brad was indicating with BRE design, this is what we call a high level design. And what it does is they use AI algorithms to actually map the entire city or a portion of the city, just whatever the design encompasses. And it not only identifies fiber, but it also identifies all the component parts. So you can see these, you guys, it's probably a little small, but do you see these green boxes?
Yeah.
Those represent huts where equipment would be placed to support the neighboring buildings, whether they be homes or businesses or whatnot. Okay. So a couple of things. BRE has the ability to input certain address locations before their AI algorithms take over and do the design. They also have the ability to actually load your plat map information from your county assessor's office or from whatever, wherever you can get that. So that is, you can kind of, if you will, set up parameters and actual addresses of city properties and all that good stuff ahead of time. And then it will obviously create the design around that. Now, you don't have to. They do have mapping, general maps and general GIS information. But we have found the more information that we can plug into the system from you or from your assessor's office, the better the result's going to be right out of the initial process. So this will give you an idea. I'm going to zoom in here so you can kind of see the fiber paths run down the major corridors and streets. If you zoom in, as I zoom in tightly, you'll kind of see how each of the properties, the parcels, have a fiber tail going to them and connecting. So again, it uses GIS data, it uses plat map data to identify the property lines, and then it automatically draws the fiber, and it automatically calculates the number of fiber count, so the size of the fiber strand for each one of these neighborhoods or business districts. Okay? Each one of these color codes represent a different thing. Okay? So this is a 560, feet of this type of a T2 cable, right? And this actually means something to people that actually engineer and build these networks. I don't know what it means specifically. Okay? But you can kind of get the idea of, and if I click on here, this is a box, a junction box, a terminal box. And these are the cables feeding into that box and coming out of that box. So it's very, very detailed. It's all done in an automated way through AI algorithms. Okay. And then and this outputs what we call, if I come up here, it'll output basically a BOM, a bill of materials that I can then use, and this is what Brad was talking about. We can use this to estimate cost of materials as we're estimating the cost to build out the network for you. Okay? The BOM it's a very, very detailed spreadsheet. I'll show you. Okay? So here are all the network elements. Here's a description of them. Here's the ID in their system, what it is. And then here the number that you're going to need to build this network as it's designed today by their system. If you come down here, some of these things will be meaningful. So for example, right here, that entire design is 1.2 million feet of civil works, basically, of infrastructure build out. Okay, so all the roads, all the drops going to the homes, all of that calculates out. Now, one thing you'll notice here, and Brad kind of mentioned this is called high level design. From here, you go to low level design, where they start adapting and well, let me give you a perfect example. So right down here in Westport, they've got fiber essentially attaching to this bridge and running the length of this bridge to feed the port area down here. And you guys probably know this area much better than I do even, okay? But as I understand it, that bridge is actually a movable bridge.
Yeah, it's a drawbridge.
Yeah, so that's not really going to work, right? In a low-level design, the BRA folks would say, oh, okay, yeah, we can't use that bridge as a path. So let's move up here, let's terminate that fiber right here, and then their system would automatically reroute all of that fiber count down along this line, across this area, and to feed this. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what we call low-level design. So what Brad's talking about is high-level design. It gives us a lot of data that we can use. Now, the thing about that is that might add a few feet of fiber to the design, but it's not going to change it to where, the financials aren't relevant anymore, because you still have that length of fiber kind of running here. You're just kind of moving, where is it running from? Does that make sense? It might change slightly the BOM, but not significantly. That's why when we run the numbers, we typically say, look, there's a plus or minus factor here, right? Because once you get to low level, where you actually have an engineered plan that can be, you can go to an RFP for construction, that may change slightly, it may shift slightly. It may be better, or maybe a little worse. Does that make sense?
Yep.
The other thing too is sometimes it'll put, and this is where getting your data from your assessor's office is really key. Sometimes it'll put a fiber connection in an empty lot, right? Because it doesn't necessarily know, unless we've gotten that information fed in the system, that there's an actual building or there's an actual home on that property. It may be a piece of property that someone's using as their side yard or backyard, right? Because they own it, they just haven't built on it. And you're not going to want to put you may want to terminate fiber in front of it in case in the future there is a home built on that property, but you're not going to obviously extend that in and connect it to a non-house. So that's where this process changes. But the miracle about BRE is they can do all of this in software in a completely automated way. So it's very, very affordable in comparison to an alternative where you have an engineering and drafting staff doing this in a CAD system. Any questions about any of this?
No, that's great.
No, it's awesome.
Okay.
So I'll follow up that. Thanks, Devin. So that's part of, so with the public works, one thing Devin didn't mention, but they may have access to the pole data. And if we can get the pole data, BRE can load that in and actually know in areas where it's going to be above ground, know exactly where those poles are. They also, some of the types of questions they're going to ask them. Devin mentioned kind of, town facilities. They're going to want to know where are the big town facilities, so they can look at those for two reasons. Number one, that might be an area that they can put the larger huts, things like that. And number two, obviously make sure connectivity. So there's a lot of value you can get from that. We would highly recommend that Dartmouth does at least a portion. Again, doesn't have to be the entire. I don't have the exact premise count. That's one thing we'll confirm with the Public Works Department, also the exact premise count. But those are the types of things. We're going to get the information from the Public Works, and then we'll come back and sit down and say, okay, here's what we have, here's the information we've got, and it would cost this much to do this much to do that, et cetera. So we'll get back to you with that. That'll be a decision later in the process. We'll probably want to get that started in January or so at the latest. I think we're looking to complete the study by the end of February, sometime in March. So doesn't take BRE a long time to do this, typically a couple weeks, but I just wanted to get...
One other thing I'll mention, and this I think is one of the primary reasons why Westport decided to move forward and get it done, is when you are applying for certain grants, some of them actually require this type of work to be done ahead of time. And you have to actually show them the engineering drawings as part of the grant application. And so it serves not only the purpose of helping to narrow in on the cost structures and be more precise in that area, but also it helps you if down the road you're going to apply for federal and state grant opportunities. So.
Yeah, it all sounds pretty good. Anything else?
All right, sorry, I think I froze for a second, but I think Devin didn't. Did everybody hear what he said?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great.
So I think,
all right.
so Brad, just so like we talked about for DPW, I just want to make sure that we have the right people on the call. So if you can give me like a list of what type of information you're going to want, because like, you know,
That was included in what I sent out
Right.
15 minutes before the meeting.
Okay.
So there's a Public Works and it has the types of questions we'll ask. So that's what I said. Once you have a chance to review that, you and I can get together, schedule that. You can communicate with the committee to see if anybody can or wants to participate, just for informational purposes, probably more than anything. But yeah, you'll be able to see, oh, I need this person or that person to be involved.
Right. Yeah. Because I think like our GIS stuff is like through our planning department versus our Board of Health. So it's probably like more people than we think. It's just like one or two. It might be like 4 or 5 here.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Last thing, I should have done this earlier. I'm going to share my screen one more time. I know we're at our time. I think we're scheduled for an hour and a half, so I'll be very quick here. This is the last document that I forwarded to you. Do you see that yet?
Yep.
Okay, and this is what I said that, you know, in talking with a few of you, so we've got, and we just put this together very quickly, so we're going to refine it and make it look pretty, but broadband definitions, so just some broadband, underserved, unserved, kind of defining a lot of these terms. Speeds, basically, what does 25 megabits really mean? What does 100 megabits, 300 megabits, a gigabit? What is kind of time to download a 2-hour movie and some things there? And then types of connections. What's the difference between 3G, 4G, 5G, wired, you know, satellite, fixed antenna, DSL, cable modem, etc. So you have that to review. I just wanted to show you that that's in the materials we've sent out. But what we were thinking is we would probably at the beginning of the survey have a link that says if you have any questions on some of the terms, go to this document. We'll also have it on the website, and maybe again, maybe on the front of the website, but then also maybe again in the frequently asked questions. So as they're going through this, we'll try to create a resource so help answer some of the questions people may have.
Great. Yeah, I like that idea. Yeah, I like
And
that.
then let's see, stop that. So the only thing I have, so on the next agenda, next meeting, we'll, based on your feedback, have an education session at the beginning, like we talked about. And really only 2 things I think we want to cover. Finalize the website questions and survey. Make sure that's ready. So once we get the approval from the select board, once we run that by the select board, we release that. And then the other item is just, I want to start having a discussion of legal and financial considerations. And what I mean by that is what can a city or town actually do in the state of Massachusetts? What legally can you do, not do? And what, start talking about different ways to fund networks, whether, through grants, but bonding, all the different approaches that are possible for funding networks. So that'll be the main 3 topics of the next session.
Great, sounds great. Thank you very much for everything.
All right, well, thank you. I ran 2 minutes over, but hope that's not too bad.
No, it's great.
No.
All right, great. We will, I'm sure, be in communication, and we'll talk to you again in 2 weeks.
Okay, great. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
everyone.
Right.
I'm breathless. All right, so we've covered that. The next item is the discussion on the One Touch Make Ready bill. And Peter, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I sent for your review. I think Sarah said she's gonna abstain from it just because of her employment with Verizon.
That's understandable,
And
absolutely.
so, but it's up to you if you wanna make a motion to approve that letter. I can forward it on, or
Did you
Discuss
did you
it,
get
or-
a chance to read it?
I have not, no. When did you send it out, Peter?
over the weekend.
Yeah. Did you have a chance to look at it?
Yeah.
Essentially what it is that One Touch Make Ready is a bill that's in front of the House.
Oh,
and
yes, I
Senate.
did, I'm sorry, I did
We
see
discussed
that.
it last time,
Yes.
and I read it, and I didn't see anything that was too, it's just simply urging each person.
Politician,
Yeah,
yep.
each politician to, hey, this makes life a lot easier, please vote for it.
And we
right?
got,
I'm
yeah,
getting-
and the report back we got from Entry Point was they feel like it's, a good thing that would be in place. It's in place in all other New England communities. Massachusetts is the only one that doesn't have it right now. And like I said, the comments I received earlier, what brought it to my attention was that there was a community out in Western Mass that had an issue with this. Like, they were fighting the utility company to get their project kind of like through the, it wasn't that the utility company was purposely slowing it down, it's just that the utility company had their own work to do, and they're like, well, we.
Wasn't a priority.
Right, it's not a
Yeah.
priority,
Bottom of the
so
list.
it just gives the,
Yes.
my understanding is it gives the municipality the.
A third
the-
option.
A third option to go get the study done from their people directly.
Yep.
And then hand them the study and say, here it is, here's, like, your people did this, like, your company that you're gonna hire did it.
Essentially, we hire the subcontractor for the company.
Right.
Yep,
And get it done
So-
quicker.
So I make a motion to send the letter. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
And vote. I say aye.
Aye.
One abstention.
One abstention. I guess that passes, so that's good. I'm glad we're gonna do that one. All right, and the last piece is approval of the,
We didn't have any minutes, so we can just hold off on that for the next meeting.
okay, great. And anything else anybody else wants to discuss? No, I think everybody's ready to go home and have a drink. With that, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Can I get a second?
Second?
Vote. Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.